Okay, here we go. uh, how the fuck do I get this shit into presentation slideshow? Well, YouTube. Here we are. Here we are again. After after multiple drama sessions, multiple multiple ezreal topics, and I just have to go and fuck it up again, don't I? In case you all can't tell, I'm a little bit excited to talk about this. First of all, because we'll just get into it because I intend to be honest. So for those of you that don't really know what's going on, I plan to get into it afterwards. That said, I want to get my number one issue point across. I have zero issues with the people who said stuff on Twitter, or who did things like that. I don't take it as any personal attack. They're attacking my opinions, which are it's valid. That said, I don't think their arguments are valid, but the the ability to do that is valid. They can do whatever they want. They're not like calling me any names or anything like that. So I have zero issues with it. Um, I'm going over this because I have seen things like this. Like I was, catching up on some of the PC League drama where like LS and TF Blade, for those of you that are aware of that, they couldn't handle it like adults, right? We don't need to devolve this into anything. I just feel that he is factually wrong in this scenario, and that is why I am speaking like I am, right? So that's my point, and that's where I stand on this point. Um, Again, if anybody has any issues and they feel like I was unfair, too harsh to them, or just wrong, please reach out to me and we can talk it over. I don't mind speaking with anyone. That said, let's get into this. I am going to be provocative, and I'm probably going to do a little bit more flaming than I would like. But again, I'm going to say it. If anybody feels that I'm too much, just let me know. Because I don't want to make anybody actually genuinely upset about this. It's all in good fun. That said, I'm a little giddy. So we get to talk about this. So first of all, we get to talk about this tweet. So I'm gonna let this play out because I want to show the full clip. Give me 1 second to unmute him.
Strike Jin is the ultimate lane bully that scales into late game. AP Kaiser is still destroying the rift with her poke from her second ability. Tristana is the best late game carry with her crazy attack speeds. Ezreal is the safest dual lane carry to play and does a lot of poke damage. With Zaya's feathers, you can make them fly to do a lot of damage.
Okay, so there's the full clip. I didn't want to interrupt because obviously I had the first part muted. I don't think that's important. This is the build he posts. Where he goes mana immune, boots of mana into Triforce, Essence Reaver, Sorelda's Grudge, Riftmaker. Obviously the runes we can see KingKwr, Brutal, Coup de Grace, Bloodline, and Bone Plating. This prompts my response, which is as follows. I respond with the Ezreal build, Troll Despair. We'll sort of get into this later with the additional context, but just know that obviously Riftmaker is not good, and it's not going to be good. And then he responds with this statement, aren't you the same person who says Untitled Triforce and Iceborn Gauntlet in the same build? Yes, I am. I will show you all that later. Nope, it's this one, where I speak about literally which builds I think are the best. I got a bunch of extra tabs open here. Let me close this one out as well. So I will go over that. I then follow up with the comment, I want to clarify again that that is not my recommendation in terms of build on top, only if you want tank stats. That did get an autocorrect there, since that was the core point of a Triforce factors, which again we'll get into a little bit later with a lot of the extra sort of context. kingK, I'm not exactly who this person is, or I'm not exactly sure who this person is. I haven't interacted with them a ton, but it looks like he is a pro player, so I do at least consider his opinion to be valid to respond to. Mr. Double Sheet Item, you should not complain about any item build ever, and don't do that tanky stat argument. There would have even been 10 better tank items, so Mr. Super Smart, how about you enlighten us with your insane and Ezreal build? And I intend to. That said, don't try me. So let's go to the additional context. I'm just going to pull up all three of these links first. The YouTube videos are here in case anybody would like to watch them on their own. That said, they are not, I would say, required reading. in terms of what I think is important. So, first tweet from me is this, where I say, yeah, I think people building Iceborn on ezreal are just trolling at this point. And so here I have screenshots of my damage over 20 seconds. The methodology I point here, which is 1Q into only autos, because I don't want to do timing stuff right now, and I was like, I just want to see what the auto damage is in terms of difference. So you can see right here, 1938 damage per second, 96, but that's only the relatively recent damage per second. And then you can see 1468, 21 seconds, so a little bit later in terms of time frame, right? So this even has additional time over this, and it's about 69 DPS. So it's about, what, 500 DPS down, I think is a fair statement to say. So then I continue because I was doing a bunch of testing where Man Immune is the best first item, but Essence Reaver is just as good in terms of 1-item power spike Rosary, and then 2-item power spikes, and then fully stacked Man Immunes. So then we have starting, who is, as it says over here, previous Wildlord middle laner for Sentinels, at Tribe Gaming, at Immortals, also a very popular streamer, if you do know him. So they respond with, Iceborn ezreal is good for team utility and its tankiness, obviously lower on the damage, but I would still argue confidently that if I played versus Tri-Ice on ezreal, which one is more annoying? Iceborn. DNCO, another pro player, another YouTuber responds, Iceborn Gauntlet's value is just so insane on ezreal and broken that it can't be tested through numbers. Iceborn versus Triforce any day of the week. I respond with, I don't really see the difference in value here. It's about 900. This is obviously wrong. It's about 500. I just can't do math. Over 20 seconds of mana immune stacks, without mana immune stacks, and about 1,000 width. It's only 30% slow that you can get from Serelda's if need be, and if you need tank stats, Frozen Heart can fill a similar role. Frozen Heart is not the only tank item, and actually, we will get into it later, but I think Frozen Heart isn't even the best tank item once I did some more testing. So again, I want to clarify, I want to say here that I think this is probably wrong. I don't think it's wrong in context of the argument. However, I think that overall it is a bad opinion. I'm trying to do this because I want people to understand where I feel the flaws in my argument are, because I don't want to project this as some sort of all-seeing, I know everything, I'm 100% correct. And then I reply with this tweet, which contains the full references, right? So here is the full actual 20-second video. So I'm going to just skip ahead to it. You can see I test at level 10. I will actually change up my methodology later where I will test at level 15 just to make things a little bit more consistent in terms of not having to worry about leveling up through XP. So that said, if you want to check all of this out, you can check it out here. That said, I'm just going to sort of skip past this and go straight to this point, which is the numbers. So mana immune stacked, no mana immune stacks, right? 34, 46 in 20 seconds, 43, 37 in 20 seconds. That's where I got that 900 difference from, which is different than the other one, obviously, because this one I was spamming Qs, the other one I wasn't. So that's why there's that different in DPS. You can see that the Q is a lot more effective with Triforce than it is with Iceborn Gauntlet. And then mana immune stacked, I talk about 44, 29, 40, 54, 54, so about a 1,000 damage difference. And then this is to address a different argument, which is people arguing about CDR because Iceborn has 5 more ability haste. And so I respond with this to show that the ability haste doesn't actually do that much. It's about a 1 second difference on most abilities. And even on your R, that 2 second difference doesn't really matter since you're able to get it up very quickly using your passive. Starting responds with this argument, which is, this really doesn't matter unless you play perfectly, perma-autoing, and assuming no threats from the enemy, the value of Iceborn is way superior. So I have addressed these arguments before. I intend to address them again really quickly. So first of all, the perma-autoing thing is not a good response to the methodology question, because there is no perfect methodology for testing a build in terms of damage in a game. And the argument that I would respond with is, right, perma-autoing is just the best way to test because it's just pure damage, right? You just want to see how much damage you can get, and you're assuming that generally the same amount of autos will be taken off, unless you specifically think that Iceborn will allow you to move closer to the enemies to get more autos versus Triforce, which is not the argument he's making here. However, I think that argument is sort of valid. It sort of also ties into the tanky argument. So he makes 3 main arguments: tanky, utility slow, more haste, less mana problem. So the tanky argument I understand, and that's why I obviously reference using a different tank item that has mana in it. Same with utility slow. I talk about how that can be solved by Sereldas. He then proceeds to say it's almost literally impossible to one-shot an Ezreal who has exhaust, 200 armor, E, and a flash while providing slow, compared to an Ezreal who has more damage but gets one tapped by a Kha'Zix through exhaust. I don't think that this is a fair argument, and I will say specifically because game scenarios are hard to evaluate without actually having something to reference around, right? Because if the Ezreal maybe is bad positioning, right? Maybe it's just bad positioning by the Ezreal, and that's why he's able to get flanked by the Kha'Zix. Maybe it's a bad support player, right? It's really hard to isolate why in this scenario the Ezreal is maybe getting one tapped or maybe not, right? It's also there is no Kha'Zix in this scenario testing for the one tap. He then proceeds to say also survivability above DPS at the end of the day. What's the point of having a lot of damage if you can't live long enough to do damage? Ezreal is one of those champs that has a lot of damage on its own, but you can build items so that you can build. I would assume that he means so you can build items like Iceborn and Triforce and DPS instead of DPS. Yeah, I apologize. I messed that up there. Um, so I don't really like this argument again, or I don't think it's valid. I think it's a. I should also mention fair arguments are arguments that I think have reason, right? There is a reason that they are right. There is logic there. I think all of these arguments, except for the perma autoing one, are fair and they are reasonable. However, I don't think they are valid in terms of being actually true, right? I don't think they if you're imagining an argument as like a team fight, right? They don't actually stand up in terms of what's going on, right? Because survivability above DPS only matters if you're aiming to last a long time and right outpoke the enemy over a long period of time. However, if you're doing more damage, you can force the enemy to come into you earlier as a poke comp. And I don't really understand that. I also mentioned that you can just go Bloodline because I was testing with Alacrity, and like we see in itzstuart's build, he does go Bloodline, which gives you a lot of sustain. Um, yeah, so you guys can sort of read a bunch of these if you're more interested. I also did some testing with Frozen Heart and Sereldas that I want to bring up really quickly, which is right here. But basically, Frozen Heart does actually do a lot less damage. You can see 4072 versus 344076, or 3185 and 4072 versus 3446, 4429. So it is not a ton of damage less comparatively, right? It's only about 400, but it's still a good amount in my opinion. I think that is enough to detract from a going second argument in terms of why you shouldn't go Frozen Heart second. You can also see that Serelda's, in terms of the slow, is not necessarily a valid argument as well because you can go Serelda second here. You don't need to go a Sheen item. So that is sort of the context around why I'm having this argument. Now to sort of sum this up. So I uploaded a bunch of film onto my YouTube, which is these 4 videos. It's me doing a bunch of tests with a bunch of different items. I list them all down below here. If you are interested in reading any of this, I do plan to post this PowerPoint presentation publicly. That's why. So, first of all, you can see a few things. I am trying out a lot of items here. I assume that you're going to go Manamune, and I assume that you're going to go Serelda's Grudge, right? Those are the 2 items that I assume. I also assume neutral boots in terms of like anything that is not going to do damage because boots are extremely situational in my opinion, right? Some games you might want pen boots, some games you might want mana boots. It really just depends. And so that's why I chose to exclude boots. That is a difference in terms of methodology and damage. If anyone is willing to test that, please go ahead. I don't really want to test with ezreal anymore. I'm kind of tired of seeing this champion on my feed. However, I feel necessary to defend my opinions because I am objectively correct in a lot of these scenarios. So to start off, right, I test with a bunch of items. You can see Essence Reaver, Triforce, Blade of the Rune King, Divine Sunder, Iceborn Gauntlet. I test with Nashor's Tooth as well. Other than that, I test with, I don't know where they are. I test with, I guess I just shouldn't put it in here. I tested with, why can't I remember the name of it? The item that gives you, I apologize. I forgot the name. We'll be nice here. Sterix Gauge, yes. I did some testing with Sterix Gauge as well. I didn't feel like including it. Oh, there it is. Yes, Sterix right there. You can see I didn't do a ton of testing with it because it really does have a lot less damage. And so I wasn't super interested in continuing to test with it extensively. That said, I'd like to throw it out there as another alternative for a tank item, right? So what I've given you all is 3 alternatives for tank items, right? You can go A, more tanky boots, which I do in this build. You can go B, Iceborn Triforce, which I do and I show as well. You can go C, Frozen Heart, which is also a valid option. And you can go D, you can go Sterix Gauge, which is a valid option. I think all of these are valid depending on maybe what you want in terms of do you want a lot of AD. That said, I want to point out a few things. I ordered this in top to bottom in terms of damage. You can see down here 5626, 112249, blah blah blah. It goes up, up, up continually. So the top 5 in terms of damage were Essence Reaver, Tri, Bork. Remember again, this is with Manamune fully stacked, and this is with Sorelda's Grudge. No pen boots, no boots at all. I believe I was testing with plated steel caps just for consistency in terms of movement speed. Then after that, we have Sunder, Iceborn, and Bork. Again, a double sheen combination. I'd like to point out both of the top 2 are double sheen combinations. And then we have Essence Reaver, Nashor's Triforce. And then we have Iceborn, Tri, Bork. So, really interesting, right? That a lot of these are, you know, the same sort of build where they have double sheen procs. Also, a very common thread here is Essence Reaver and Blade of the Ruined King. Those 2 are the most damaging items in terms of how you build. Bork, again, right there. Essence Reaver, right there. Bork. And now you'll notice, as we start getting down the list, Riftmaker appears more and more often, because Riftmaker doesn't actually do a lot in terms of increasing your damage. And that's why I didn't test with it a ton. And so, we're going to move on to the next slide. First of all, we're getting into sheen stacking. I want to explain why itzstuart's build is wrong. I think obviously, yeah, I should do this in a different order. My apologies. Give me a second. We're gonna go back here, and we're gonna do this. So let's explain why this build is wrong, and then we'll get into more of the responses. As you all saw, I did what I believe are my best
carries to play for patch 4.3a. With the new rune first strike carry to play.
So, first of all, right, he has Riftmaker. Riftmaker is just not correct on Ezreal. Blade of the Ruined King fills the same role in terms of getting you a lot of that lifesteal, and the ability that Riftmaker gives you, that extra 9% true damage, isn't actually a lot, as we can see by my testing. If anyone has a problem with me saying this, I'd encourage you to show me numbers that tell me otherwise, okay? I am done playing these little games where it's like, oh, well, like, this is, like, more important. I understood when a lot of the NA Pro players said it, because they had things that they were like, well, I value tank stats, and tank stats versus damage is a very clear trade-off when you're trying to build Ezreal. However, there is no trade-off here for Riftmaker. Bork is just simply better because of the passive that it gives you, and that's why he should not be going Riftmaker here. That's the first thing that appears to me. The second thing is I don't even mind this build. I don't think it's that bad. I think that my Troll Despair comment was probably a little bit overzealous, but I think you can see the difference in terms of, we have, what? Triforce, Essence Reaver, Riftmaker. I don't believe I tested with that. Reaver right here. Actually, I did. Reaver Triforce Essence Reaver. 13668, 8096, 8096. So these are Q spams, Q autos. Again, this has the 2 best items in terms of damage, but if you just go the same item, Blade of the Ruined King, you're getting 1,000 more DPS per second on Q spam and 2,000 more DPS over 20 seconds. It's not DPS, my apologies. DPS over 20 seconds with just a singular Q into autos, because Blade of the Ruined King makes your autos that much stronger comparatively to Riftmaker, and that is why you should not go Riftmaker. Now, let's move on to the responses. I say here, oh, this Ezreal build, Troll Despair. I'm tired of seeing Riftmaker, right? Because I know that the amount of damage it does isn't that great. Then he responds, aren't you the same person that says to go Trinity Force and Iceborn Gauntlet in the same build? I assume this is a bit of a cheeky reply. That said, I still think it's important to address, especially given this comment, which is very much aggressive in terms of how it's phrased, and I don't really think that's fair. Again, I have all of my videos on here. Now, let's start with this. I proceed to go into a practice game. Let me load in. This is the full footage. Again, if anybody has any issues, this is current patch. I encourage you to test it yourself. I'm going to go to level 15. I'm going to go to level 15 so that I don't level up off of any XP, because that could be an issue. It also just means that my cooldowns are a lot shorter. And I'm going to give myself a bunch of gold. If you all want to watch through this footage, like I said, I intend to make this full VOD, or this full thing public. So then I'm going to go over here. You're going to watch me upgrade all of my abilities and place down an enemy dummy inside the base. I'm not going to change the positioning of this enemy dummy. I am going to let it reset every time, and all of the KingKwr stack should reset. If I don't, I will re-record this video. So first, I'm going to buy Triforce. You'll see that I aim the Q a different direction and do not hit the dummy. The dummy will then be hit for what is a total of 193 damage, based off of one auto attack, using the Triforce passive. As I let the passive fade, I then proceed to sell it. I buy Iceborn Gauntlet. So I mess up here. However, after one auto, you can see it's 130. I do a second auto, it's at 200. So autos are doing 70 damage, in case you are interested there. That said, I feel that, doing two autos does sort of undermine the integrity a little bit, so I'm going to let my passive reset, do a single auto. Again, we hit 130. So I'm now going to buy both Triforce and Iceborn Gauntlet. And I would like the people to ask, play along in chat, feel free to comment, and, tweet at me on Twitter. Oh my god. How much damage do you think this is going to do? Right? Because if people are correct in what they're saying, and it's a common argument, then it should only do 130 damage, or it should do 193 damage with no Iceborn Gauntlet passive, correct? Right? Because people are saying that you can't buy both passives, and both passives will not proc. I intend to prove you all different, because I know this. I've tested this 5 times. I did this last year. I did this a month ago. I did this like 6 months ago. I know because I've tested this. And so here, let's play it out and watch what happens. I do the auto. Boom. So first of all, let's start with number 1. I forgot I can't rewind. My apologies. Let's start with number 1. As I let the passive fade, this is the Iceborn. Okay, cool. So, first of all, you'll see that it appears only the Triforce passive is proccing, right? It appears that way. Now, why do I say it appears that way? Like, what's the difference between saying it appears that way versus it is that way? Well, as you'll watch the auto come out, you'll see that, oh, that's a little weird. If only the Triforce passive was proccing, then it should only do 193 damage and not give you the slow field. If only the Iceborn Gauntlet passive was proccing, it should only give you 130 damage. Now, obviously, it's not stacking. It's not giving you that, what would be about 270 damage, right? Because we saw our autos are doing 70, Iceborn Gauntlet has an additional 60, so it'd be about 253 damage, is what you'd expect. Obviously, Triforce increasing this by about 123. So you would expect 265. That said, you're only missing out on 60 damage, not to mention ezreal isn't scaling as well with the Iceborn passive, comparatively to the Triforce passive, right? Because you're not building a ton of armor. So, I want to point out that you are all wrong when you say this to me. And I'm not going to hear any more of this, oh, you can't stack sheen items. There are some items you can't stack. I will give you that. That is true. However, sheen is not one of them. What it does and how it works is it takes the most damaging passive and then applies the passives of all others that do not do damage. I know this because I tested it. If you all want to, you can do Nasus. Nasus will often build Divine Sunder, Iceborn Gauntlet. I think it's a fair build because you will have the damage from Divine Sunderer and the slow from Iceborn Gauntlet, so that you can build a slow sort of Nasus, right? I'm done with this topic. I'm not going to speak about it again. That said, I will speak about it again when I get my sweet, sweet, sweet revenge. Let's continue on to the next slide. This is why my solutions make sense. I sort of spoke about that a little earlier. However, I want to go over it one more time because I think it's really important. It's about the damage. So this, right, is the solution I came to. I actually didn't speak about this. My apologies, I did not speak about this. So this is me quoting Starting, who basically says he'd report himself in-game if you ever built Frozen Heart over Bork. I still maintain that Riftmaker is the drop if you're going to build Frozen Heart. You can also build something like Sterix, or you can build Iceborn. Now, the reason that I suggest this, And again, I'm going to say this. I don't think this is the best build. And I think that this is probably wildly unoptimized in terms of how it's built out. Um, Obviously, I am not going to say that this is necessarily the best order, right? It might be better to go straight into Manamune, and then build Triforce, and then finish Reaver, then go into Sorelda's, then go into Bork. This is just the order that I thought could do the most in terms of fixing all of the issues that I thought Ezreal had. Now, I want to talk about this build, because this build is the one that seems to have caused conflict. First of all, we've stated one. People want the tank stats and they want the slow, right? People said that they are willing to sacrifice damage to get more tank stats and to get the slow. However, if you build both Triforce and Iceborn Gauntlet, you do not have to sacrifice that much, as we saw earlier in the numbers, in those pure statistics, which again, if anyone believes that I am wrong, I invite you to test it out, show your methodology, show your work, and then we can have a discussion, because I could be wrong, and I am not going to deny that there is a possibility that I may be wrong. And that is what I am going to say here, and I'm probably going to say it again. But the reason that I say this is because this is my solution, right? Because I understand that I think that this build will be better at all times. However, this isn't a satisfying conclusion for like either DNZ or starting, because it's me saying the same thing. I'm not budging. I'm not using their feedback as an analyst or as a coach to innovate and like help them do better, right? Because my job as a coach and as an analyst is to take what the players give to me and then use that to move forward, to try to find something better that they can use to have better impact within the game. Um, and that is why I suggested this build. Why? Well, first of all, we saw that the difference between Iceborn and the difference between a Frozen Heart was about 400 damage, so not that much. The difference between, something with a Bork and something with a Riftmaker is a lot. So, what we need to do is we need to consider a few things. First of all, we want Bork, because Bork is doing a lot more damage than Riftmaker in terms of utility, in terms of lifesteal. And when you do more damage, you're going to lifesteal more. So that's number one. Number two, Sorelda's Manamune are guaranteed. That leaves us 3 utility slots. One of those is going to be taken up by Bork in our ideal build, right, as you can see in both. Number 2 is going to be taken up by Triforce, because I want to deal damage, and I don't want to sacrifice a lot of the health. So now we're left at point number 3. What are we going to finish building? Well, we have a few options. We have Steric's Gauge, we have maybe like a tank item, um, and then you have a Frozen Heart, and an Iceborn Gauntlet. So Frozen Heart we can discard already, right? Because it does less damage, there's no reason to do it. Steric's Gauge I think is definitely an option. That said, it does also do a lot of less damage, and it doesn't help with the mana problems that the two here have mentioned a lot. And that's why I went with this build specifically, because it doesn't lose that 2-item power spike, which is a lot of damage, especially when you're playing a poke comp and you want to have those extended fights, but it also continues to do what they want in terms of having that tank stats and being able to do a lot of damage. That is why I think my solutions are the best. For anyone that thinks my solutions are incorrect, I encourage you to show your work as to why you think so. I don't want to hear this feels better, or in this hypothetical scenario, this does more. I want to see concrete proof. Show me a bunch of in-game examples. Show me a bunch of math that you've done. Show me a literal test in-game. I will accept all of these. However, I'm not going to accept the gotchas. I want to talk about this one. Let's talk about here, yeah. Like I said, I addressed these arguments earlier. I don't really intend to go through them again, but I want to go through this because I think the community is bad at evaluating stuff. So first of all, we're gonna work bottom up here. I'm gonna start down here with starting in DNZO. I think that I don't agree with their arguments, right? That is the statement that I made, and that's the statement I'm continuing with. I respect most of the players in this. I respect Stuart a lot. I respect DNZO a lot. I respect starting a lot. As I said earlier, I'm not familiar with kingK Wild Rift, so I'm not going to comment on him as much because I don't feel that it's fair to necessarily. I'm going to shit on him later, but just like I'm going to shit on Stuart later, I'm going to be 100% clear about that. But I don't think it's fair to bash him as hard as I would like to because I don't know if he's, I don't know the work he puts in behind the scenes. He might be a great worker, and I don't think it's fair to bash him if I don't know, you know? Um, so, although I don't think starting and Dienzio were right, they had arguments, right? The arguments here are I think at least compelling. I believe this is the wrong thread. Yeah. So this is like I said earlier. I think these are arguments that are valid. However, this is just another one of those cheeky replies. I'm assuming it's trolling. It could very well be malicious. But again, here, this is a gotcha argument. What this is this is not a response to me. This doesn't tell me anything, right? Um, what am I supposed to do with this? Mr. Double Sheen item, you shouldn't complain about any build. So first of all, you're saying because I'm building Double Sheen that there's one the assumption that I'm wrong without actually doing any testing, right? Without actually proving that I'm incorrect. And number two, that because I'm wrong, I therefore don't deserve an opinion. I will admit it. I have been wrong on numerous fucking occasions. That said, I've also been right on numerous fucking occasions. I'll start with two ones that I was right on, or I'll start with one I was right on, one I was wrong on. One, I was right about Trace Esports. If you guys go back and look at a lot of my comments around that team, I said that they were a team that could fight for playoffs to middle of the pack. Like, they weren't going to be great, but they weren't going to be world beaters either. Or they weren't going to be, like, awful either. And that's about where they were this season. On the other hand, before Icons, I said that China was going to get wiped, like 3 or 4 of their teams. I thought they just looked like ass. Um, Obviously, I ate my words on that one, so, I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong. It happens a lot. It happens with putting your takes out there. Don't do the tanky stat argument again. There would have been 10 better tank items. Name one. Name a tank item that's better that I did not mention in this video. Okay? That's my challenge. Do it. Because if you do, that means we can have an honest conversation. So, Mr. Super Smart, how about you enlighten us with your insane ezreal build? I don't want to address this because it's just sarcastic. Homeboy, like I said, I don't know you. I'm not going to criticize you a ton. But talk shit, get hit is the theme of this video. So, let's get some hits. The community is asset evaluating stuff. This is a follow-up to sort of everything that I've seen so far. People like what feels good over what is good. The objective, I think I see this the most in top lane play and ranked. And this is not the best example, and I'm not going to claim it's the best example, but I think it's a good example. Oftentimes in top lane and ranked, you have to gracefully lose lane. You don't have to gracefully lose the game. But what I realized is, especially back when I was playing top lane a little bit more in ranked, and I'm going to be honest, dog shit at it. I wasn't wave manipulating as much as I should. I wasn't, doing the right things in lane. But even then, the reason that I was doing that was because I was trying to be a hero. You don't need to be a hero, right? You don't need to be correct. You don't need to feel good about the game. Sometimes you're going to get shit on, and your game is going to feel god awful, and it's going to be bad, and it's just not going to feel good. But you're going to win, and that's what matters, right? At the end of the day, we all want that little dopamine hit as we get our ELO, and that's where this is, right? And I understand Dienzio's argument about you can't measure Iceborn in stats or in gold or in terms of that because the value it gives is based on a team fight, which is a complex, multivariable thing that's happening over a multitude of times within the game. And I understand that, but at the same time, how am I supposed to interact with that, right? When you're arguing against or for something, I think it's good faith to put an argument out there that people can interact with. That's why I'm so data driven. Because I want people to be able to see my argument and be like, okay, cool, I can dissect this. Here's what he thinks. Here's why he thinks it. Here's why he's wrong. That's the most important part. I can dissect itzstuart's argument because I can see his build. I can say, okay, here's what he thinks about Riftmaker. Here's why he thinks it, right? And here's why he's wrong, why Bork is better. And that's what's important. Moving on. I'm going to do the same thing that I fucking complained about a bunch, which is the little gotcha arguments. This is my first one, which is like, hey bro, if you're going to say shit, be consistent, Kraken Slayer, brutal. This is, I want to make clear, I took this build off of his website the day that I'm recording this video, which is the same day that we are having this air quotes argument. So I'm just, I am I am trying to, it feels bad to do this to me because I feel like this is just a gotcha and it's very paradoxical and I don't feel like it's very interactable with. I'm just going to ask for consistency because I was going to go on here and look at like, oh, like why did he build these items? Like stuff like that because he does have, I think, a good website in terms of what his ideas are. But I can't because he's not consistent. So moving back a slide. I don't Again, I'm assuming he's trying to be cheeky. That said, this is my time, and I'm gonna say my fucking piece because I can't really say it anywhere else. He's wrong on a lot of these fucking builds. So let's start with Ash. This is an Ash build again. If you want to check it out, this is from today. You all have seen it in the bottom right-hand corner. I have the time that I'm recording this video. Ash does not scale off of crit. There is no reason to build crit on Ash. Pure 80 is just better. What I mean by that is the Manamune Black Cleaver into Bork build, or no, the Manamune Black Cleaver Serelda's Bork build. It's just straight up. No, it's Manamune Black Cleaver Triforce Serelda's Bork. That build is straight up better than this. Again, I have not done the math. I may be incorrect. I have not done the math. I may be incorrect, and I'm going to put that out there in case I'm wrong. I also think this is a. I'm going to talk about this a little later, but this build is a slight appeal to authority. It's the one that's more popular in China in Pro Chinese League. So I will talk about that a bit later, but just put that aside. Ash doesn't scale off of crit, her slow does, which means that she's not doing a ton of damage off of crit, which means that there's not a lot of value into building crit at all. Not to mention LDR is just a bad item in terms of armor penetration. I understand the value of buying it for the crit, but unfortunately, it's not that valuable on Ash, right? You don't need 100% crit because you're getting air quotes, guaranteed crit because the crit scales on based on slow. So you don't need 100% crit. Instead, it's better to just buy Mortal Reminder every time, get the anti-heal, and I think it's just better in terms of the passive, right? It's a lot more value there. Kha'Zix item build. This is also just incorrect. You should not be going through lethality items. Black Cleaver here is much better, right? Because what Black Cleaver does is the same thing as a lethality item. It reduces armor. However, it scales a lot better, and it's a lot easier to buy early. Not to mention, he has 0 tank stats here, right? And when you buy those tank stats, you get a lot of value. The Ornn item build. I want to make clear this is a support item build. He builds this on a lot of supports, and it's just incorrect. Arman's Twin Guard should be your third item. It is way better than any other item that you can build third. The reason for this is it gives you A, tenacity, B, armor, and C, size. All of which are extremely valuable. You stack your passive really quickly on it. It gives you a bunch of MR. It makes you unkillable. It gives you a bunch of armor. It gives you unkillable, as opposed to indexing into one item versus the other, right? Because you either index into armor or you index into MR, and so you're not doing as much in terms of being a tank. Not to mention, you'll notice he does not go Perseverance. He decides to go Overgrowth instead. I think there's value in Overgrowth. That said, it's not correct here. I also think that, like I said, if you're going Armament Twin Guard, it really nullifies the value of not having that tenacity early. So I think you need to swap one of these out. Other than that, Triumph is also not a good rune to go. You should be going either towards like a futures market or something, or you should go towards the Mark of the Week, which procs on a lot of your abilities, right? Because you have your Q, you have your W, you have your E, you have your R, all of which will proc Mark of the Week, and then you can not aim to do a ton of damage, but you do still do a good amount of damage on Ornn, and that's why that is important. I understand the value of Triumph, but because it doesn't really give you that more damage, it doesn't give you more damage, it's not as useful. Not to mention, if you do need any sustain, Warmog's armor should be giving that to you by itself. Also, in the current metagame, Aftershock is bad. Glacial Augment is just better. It should be taken 90% of the time on 90% of the supports. I think Alistar is probably the only exception that I can think of off the top of my head. That's all I have. Finally, I want to address some things. I want to be extremely clear, and I understand that my methodology is not perfect, and I want to understand what my issues are. So, I want to say, my methodology is not perfect. I use the same runes every time, but I think using coup de grace is bad for testing sometimes, because if you do a lot of damage early and maybe less damage late, it can really offset the amount of damage you're doing late, because, you know, you'll get to that spike earlier, so you'll look like you're doing more damage when you're not, which is why I don't recommend Divine Sunderer, right? Because those bots do have a lot of health, and so I think that that's why I don't recommend Divine Sunderer, because I think it's a little bit overinflated in specifically this terminology. The other thing that I'd like to say is, if you are doing testing, please show your methodology. I've seen a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, this item is better than this item. Why? How? Where? Please explain why. I can't just, I need something to interact with, and I love interacting with the community. It's great. Number 2 is appeal to authority. I spoke about this a little bit earlier, but a lot of my builds are based out of the WRLA logic. I watch a lot of this, and I've watched a lot of pro Wild Rift for a while, and so I've sort of gotten into that mentality that, like, I think that generally a lot of them are testing over there, at least based on what I can tell. That said, I am not going to assume that they are right because they are a pro. We've seen a multitude of times where pros are just straight up wrong. They don't know what to build. They don't know why to build. Blah, 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 blah. 3, flexibility and subjectivity. This is the main reason that I don't like critiquing the Wild Rift fire builds, because I think the most important thing about building in Wild Rift is being able to understand what you need and what you don't, right? Because if you got a 4 AP team comp versus Ornn, and you're playing that Ornn support, you don't want plated, you want Merc Dreads. But a lot of people will just kind of look at the first guide they're given, and then just be like, okay, cool, I'm setting this up, and I'm building this the entire time. And that's why I have a lot of arguments against Wild Rift fire, because I think that it should be, I think that he's made the right steps, right? Because he has added that, like, sort of part where it's like, oh, against this, build this, and then swap this in. Um, I think that's a very good start, but I think that a lot more people need to be taught how to do that, and I think that the website should do a better job of that. Although, again, he's doing that for what I can imagine is probably basically free. So I appreciate him doing that at the very least. And finally, I'm going to do it. Like I said, talk shit, get hit. For the 3 people on screen, do some fucking testing before you speak, huh? Yeah, that's what I thought. No response. Damn, the voices aren't speaking to me. Ooh. No. Like I said, I do believe that the Stuart build, I'm gonna be honest, I can't fucking tell. I've never gone to this much effort in terms of doing anything. So it might be a cheeky response, it might not, but just based on how people were reacting to it, I think it isn't. Same with you, kingK. Conclusion. I want to repeat what I said at the beginning. I take zero personal issues with these people, but talk shit, get hit. That's how it works. If I am wrong on any of my arguments, and you can prove me wrong mathematically, feel free to use this template. Dear at @MBlazeKingQ, shut the fuck up, dumbass. You were fucking wrong. You can add another, you can add a few more expletives in there. Like, you can say you fucking idiot. There's really a lot of swapping there you can do. But the most important part is that last line. Your proof goes here, and that is sort of what I want to close this with. Because although I'm making this video and I'm ranting a lot, and it's like, oh, ha ha ha, and although it isn't ha 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 at the same time, right? I want people to actually test. It's really frustrating to me, and I can't imagine if anybody else gets frustrated by this. Who knows? But it's frustrating to me to watch. A lot of people just be like, yeah, this is good. Why? Divorce things from the game they are in and ask, had this game not gone this way, is it still good? Had this game gone differently, is it still good? If maybe that flip goes a different direction, do I still win? Right? Maybe if my jungler doesn't troll, do I win this game, right? If I play better, is it an execution error, right? Like, am I getting one shot by this Kha'Zix because I don't have enough armor, or because I'm just in the wrong spot? And that's where I really want to see more people improve, right? It's really important to have critical thinking skills, and I feel like there's not a lot of that within the community. Obviously, this is not just a Wild Rift issue. This is a bigger issue, but be very critical of yourself and think about how things are going, how they're happening. Um, Again, I'm gonna hop out of this real quick because that was the final conclusion, but I wanna repeat this little bit here. If anyone feels that if you have any issues with it, if you just want to talk about builds, anything really in terms of Wild Rift, I can't promise I'll be much help on anything else. Reach out to me. There's my stuff. That's all.